Hi, I'm Zewing, and today I'm going to be doing a pre-release guide for the new Shadows of the Galaxy set for Star Wars Unlimited. So I'm going to be talking about kind of how I look into opening up my pre-release kit and building a sealed deck and a bunch of the considerations that I'm making when I'm going through my pool and opening the packs. As well as I'm going to be going over a bunch of the new mechanics for the set. So let's get into it. So the basics of sealed, and this is what all the pre-release events are going to be run in, is that you're going to open 6 packs and make a 30-card deck. With that, you get to pick 1 leader out of the stuff you open, plus the promo leaders, and then you get any color base. So that means you're going to have 2 colors, plus heroism or villainy to build your deck around. Big thing to consider with sealed is that most games are going to be won with units, so you want to try to at least have 20, if not more. Because there's going to be a lot of like unit-on-unit combat in these games, and not a lot of like alternate win conditions or anything like that. Another thing to consider is that the card power level is going to be more of the thing that you want to build around, where you just want to be playing all of your best cards that you open. You don't want to be, definitely not going to get as many of the like high synergy decks like you might be able to get in draft or might be able to get in Premiere. So you generally just want to be playing like all your best cards that you possibly can. I'm going to kind of talk about how we're going to be looking to do that. So the first thing that you want to do when you open your packs is you want to start sorting all your cards. So what I generally like to do is sort them by color, and then also by like heroism or villainy aspect as well. I'll also sort out the leaders that I open as well as the rares. So one really big thing is that the reason why I sort out my rares is that these are often going to be cards that you want to build around because you're going to open 6 of them, which is at least 6 rares in your sealed pool, which is pretty much like double the amount of rares you could potentially often get in draft, right? So these are going to be a big thing with like the power outliers in your deck, and something that you wanted to kind of have in mind when you're constructing. What I'll generally do with all the cards once I've sorted them all is that I'll look through each of these piles and I'll kind of take out all of the cards that I generally find are a lot weaker or like more underpowered and stuff I don't really want to play in my deck, right? So stuff that's really niche but has a really, a bad effect or, really bad stats or anything like that. And I'll kind of just set them out to the side. From there, we're going to be able to look at all these piles and then use a couple different things to determine like what color combinations we want to play. So starting off, we want to consider what leaders we have. So you're going to open 6 packs, and there's going to be a leader in each of the packs. In addition, you're also going to have the 2 promo leaders, Moff Gideon and the Mandalorian, that you can play in Sealed. So you're going to have a total of 8 leaders. Actually gives you a lot of different options that you can play in Sealed, and you're always going to have at least one heroism and 1 villainy leader, even if all your packs are on one side or the other, so that gives you some nice options there. And I think generally with this set, just looking over a lot of the leaders, a lot of them are pretty decent in power level wise. Like there's not a lot of like outliers, one way where like there's anyone like way too strong or way too weak with the leaders, so a lot of them are pretty reasonable to play in a kind of limited sealed format. The only thing I would say is there's a few leaders that I definitely wouldn't want to play, and those are Finn, Hunter, and Dr. Aphra. All of these leaders just are really weak, especially on their hero power front sides, where the hero power really just doesn't do anything in limited, and their stats are not good enough to make up for that. So I really wouldn't want to build around these leaders if possible if I have other options. And you will have 8 leaders, right? So you often will have other options to build around. So that's the first thing you want to consider when looking at what deck you want to build with out of your pre-release pool. The next thing, which I kind of alluded to earlier, was looking at the rares. So with this set, there's actually a lot of really strong cards at rare. And stuff like Maul, stuff like Wrecker, right? And ideally with Sealed, you want to try to play as many of these cards as possible. The games in Sealed, because everyone is opening so many rares, are going to really revolve around having just like powerful cards to be playing. And if your opponent is going to have these kind of cards, right? So if you're not able to play these kind of cards, you're going to need to make it up in your deck through other ways. Maybe you open a lot of synergy or something else, but you generally want to be looking out for these kind of things in order to be able to put a lot of power on the board and contest what your opponents are doing. The other thing that you can look out for, in addition to like the rares that you might open, is looking at the uncommons that you open as well. There's a lot of uncommons in this set that honestly are pretty similar to the power level of some rares. Maybe not like the best rares over here, but you know, there's a lot of these cards like Jabba's Rancor, Chrysanthemum, Cassian, Forlom. A lot of these cards are pretty high power level and can be on like the same power level as some like medium strength rares. So you want to be looking at your pool and kind of identifying if you have any of these cards that seem like, you know, they're really good on stats or they have really good abilities, that type of thing. And definitely lean towards building a color combination with a leader where you can utilize the most of these ideally, because you really just want high power level outliers in your sealed deck if possible. The next thing we're going to kind of be looking for when we're sorting and looking through our cards is removal. So there's a few different ways that removal looks like, where it's either just like straight up removal, kind of like Rival's Fall, which just kind of defeats anything, as well as stuff with like Ambush, right? Because Ambush just comes in, removes something, often leaves the Ambush body on the board, so that can trade into something else later down the line. And yeah, all the Ambush cards are really strong. So yeah, looking for removal to give us interaction, so that way we can interact with the units that our opponents are going to be playing in the games is really important. And it is really key for winning and getting tempo and dealing with units that might be hard to deal with just by like trading into them, for example. Another thing of like kind of pseudo removal is all the capture cards. The capture cards are not really removal because the opponent will likely get their unit back at some point. But you can kind of think about it as like almost like bouncing the unit back to hand, or like temporary, right? So it's like kind of temporary removal. A lot of the capture cards play better in decks that are trying to end the game a lot faster. And they probably play worse in decks that are trying to go really long, right? Because yeah, when your opponent might not have as much time to get the unit back that you've captured if you play it right and stuff like that. All right, the final thing that we're going to be kind of looking for when we're looking for the like cards in our pool is the having a lot of like ideally early game playables and thinking about our curve as well. So one thing that's really important in this game is to have a lot of good opening plays. I think if you've played any amount of Star Wars Unlimited, you can kind of know where it's any game where you have like a 2-drop or don't have like a 2-drop or a 1-drop and they have a 2-drop or a 1-drop. Those games are often pretty hard to come back from, honestly. So it's often pretty important that you have a decent amount of openers, and luckily there are a bunch of 2-drops and honestly a bunch of 1-drops that have pretty good stats in this set. So that's pretty important to have, so that way, if your opponent just starts like playing all their units like on curve on 2, 3, 4, right, you don't just like start falling behind because you didn't have openers. The other thing that's really nice is just like really good early game units that can just kind of dominate the board. So Toro's like a 3-mana 3/5, and that's just a really strong stat line. So cards like this that help you just be able to dominate the early game and be able to start like putting pressure and deal with whatever your opponent starts playing out are pretty important. So that's kind of like the big things that I wanted to go over when like kind of looking at your sealed pool and looking at what cards to choose from. The last thing I want to do is just go over a bunch of the new mechanics of the set. So let's first start with upgrades. So not exactly a new mechanic, but there's a couple different ways that this set wants to like build around the upgrades. So there's a couple of headliner leaders where Gar Saxon and Mandalorian both want to kind of use upgrades in different ways, where Gar Saxon wants to play cards that generally already kind of come with upgrades, stuff like shields or experience tokens, and then those creatures already get extra bonus on them. Mandalorian wants to actually play upgrades, right? So you're either playing bounties or you're playing like upgrades on your own units, and Mandalorian gets bonuses. You get to do bonus stuff off of that. So this is like a general theme that's apparent in the card pool, where a lot of cards have synergies to upgrades and that kind of thing. So something to kind of be aware with, when not only just when playing these leaders, but looking for like small synergies like that when playing these cards in general. Next up, we got Bounty. So the two Bounty leaders, Jabba and Bosk, want to use Bounty in a little bit different ways, but putting bounties on your opponent's creatures is generally pretty good with both of them, right? Jabba can double up, and Bosk can take out bounties, and his linear flip side lets you cash in bounties double, right? So that's pretty good with both of these leaders. Bosk also, generally can take out the opponent's cards that have bounty a lot easier, right? He can just deal with damage to these units, which makes them easier to trade into. And then both of these play pretty well with the creatures that want the opponent's units to have bounty, right? So like Reputable Hunter, Chrysanthemum, because like Bosk is going to be putting bounties on people, Jabba just naturally puts bounties on units. They play really well with these kind of cards. And then next up we got Smuggle. So Smuggle is a mechanic that there's like two leaders, Hondo and Lando, that get bonuses with a Smuggler, can do like additional things. But honestly, a lot of the Smuggle cards that are good are just generally really good cards by themselves, right? So like Millennium Falcon and Timelander Edition, you're just playing in any deck that can support these colors, right? You don't have to play these in the leaders that smuggle, right? The thing about Smuggle is that most decks, especially in Sealed, are gonna have a decent amount of Smuggle cards, which means that with drawing 2 cards a turn into the late game, you're just generally not gonna be running out of stuff to do. You're always gonna be like able to like play cards and have take a lot of action. So it's gonna be a lot about kind of like who can gain tempo and play like higher impact cards a lot into the late game. So yeah, looking at Smuggle cards that generally are just like good by themselves is something you don't have to do a lot to make the good Smuggle cards good, right? You don't want to be playing the really bad Smuggle cards, likely, but the good Smuggle cards I think are pretty obvious that they are good. Finally, we have Tribal, which is like all having the same kind of traits, where we got Bo-Katan, who really wants you to play a bunch of Mandalorians, and Cad Bane that wants you to play a bunch of Underworld cards. I think both of these leaders are going to be a little weaker in Sealed and definitely a lot stronger in Draft, but it's very possible that you open Sealed pools that can support both of these leaders, right? It's very possible that you open a Sealed pool with a bunch of Mandalorian units and you can easily play Bo-Katan and get a bunch of bonuses off of that. Or, likewise with Cad Bane, you might open a bunch of Underworld units and be able to do that. That kind of thing. So you can be on the lookout for your Sealed pool, and if it has any of these kind of synergies, if maybe you can play Bo-Katan or Cad Bane. And you honestly don't even have to play these leaders in order to utilize these synergies. Just jamming, a package of Mandalorians, maybe like 5 or so Mandalorians that all synergize with each other into like another leader's deck, honestly might work out pretty well as well. So you don't have to necessarily be playing Bo-Katan or Cad Bane in order to do that kind of thing. So that's all I wanted to say generally about just kind of like an intro for the Shadows of the Galaxy pre-release. But yeah, if you have any questions about specific cards, or any questions about Sealed or pre-release or limited in general, feel free to leave a comment. I'm happy to just answer any questions that you guys might have. Be sure to subscribe as well, because I'm going to be doing a lot of content on Shadows of the Galaxy Limited in the future, especially on Draft, and talking about specific cards, the really good draft leaders and that kind of thing. So yeah, be sure to subscribe as I get that content out a little bit later. All right, thanks for watching.